This is Pat Tormey, and welcome to How Do I Winforms SaltAndHasha. First thing I want to tell you about is why would you bother with a salt and hash? Well, let's take a look at a couple things. First thing you need to understand is that hashing will take a string of any kind and just convert it into something that is more or less encrypted. Now, the problem with that is if I give you a expression like the word Fred and tell you to hash it, somebody can go around and figure out what that algorithm must be by just reversing the algorithm if they knew the word was Fred going in. So if they put their password in, they could actually unhash it somehow. Well, that kind of defeats the purpose of the hash. The hash should be a one-way thing that always results in the same thing. So what we do to make a hash more complicated, or more secure, is to add a salt to it. And the salt is actually just a string we're going to add to the existing hash, to the existing string before we hash it. So this way we have a secret we're not telling the user. He has his password, and we have the hash. Now, the way you use such a thing is you're going to compare the two. The user's going to put his password in there. We're going to salt it, then hash the two together. Then store that in our database. Later, when the user we need to compare with that user to see if it's the right person, they'll provide their password. We'll do the exact same thing, salt it again with the exact same string, and then compare one salt and hash to the other salt and hash. Alright, that's a little harder to explain than it is to actually do. So let's get started, and I'll show you what we need to do. Alright, so in a blink of an eye, I gave us a couple of labels, a text box, some place to put the results, and a button we can do some work with. Now, the idea here is I'm going to put in some sort of a secret message here, and I want to be able to compare it to another secret message. Again, it's important that the message cannot be reversed, so what I'm going to do is take the message itself and salt and hash it. Well, the first thing I need to tell you about is to give you a couple of references to how to get started. So I'm going to suggest you read the articles here, and especially this one. It's an excellent article, and that's how I got started on the subject. And it's the Microsoft support knowledge base. There's also some samples if you want to dig through them in the cryptic hash algorithm samples at the other link. And of course, I'm Pat Tormey at Foursquare.net. Anyway, a couple things we're going to be using here. Naturally, you're going to have import system. We're going to also bring in system security and system text, because we're going to be doing a little bit of text manipulation. Alright, so I don't need anything in my hash me button first. Now, I told you we're going to salt this, and this is going to be a secret from the end user. So I use a K for my local constants, and I'm going to put in the word Foursquare, and we can make it anything. Let's make it How Do I. Okay, so that salt is going to be the secret part. Remember, the user is going to put in their secret word, password of some kind. I'm not going to tell them what I'm salting it with, and I'm going to mix the two together to result in a hash. Now, as you can see, this isn't quite complete, but what I'm going to do is pass in some data and return a string. First thing I want to do is create a byte array of the source and then a byte array for the hash, because that's how hashings work. I got in a habit some years back of using RV as a return value. It's actually just easier when I step through debug. I can see what it is before it leaves the function. Okay, so I have a string, and all I'm going to do here is tell my ASCII encoding to get bytes of what would happen if I took my data and I slapped it together with my salt. And if you want to, you can actually put one ahead of it and one behind it, or one of each. And this is important as long as you're consistent, because you want to make sure that no matter what you do, you always salt the data the same way. And as a result of that, I will now get a brand new thing called that. Alright, now the issue I have here is that I get the source data is encrypted, or is salted, hashed, and returned to a byte array. And I'm going to take that byte array and I'm going to put it into my MD5 crypto service provider and have it just compute the hash for me, and that will return a hash as a byte array. Now, people are just not good at reading byte arrays. I'm spending a little time with them these days myself. So we have to have a shortcut, and I'm stealing this straight from the MSDN article, of how to get that converted back again. And I'll just drop that in for you. Essentially, all we're going to do there is we're going to walk through and take that thing and make it into a string. Okay? I'm using a string builder in this case, and you can do whatever you'd like, but this is what the sample showed, and it's always worked for me, and I've been using it for a while. Alright, so now what we have here is the ability to come in and say, hash something for me, and then based on that hash, it's going to run through add the salt to the data. It's going to hash it and make it into a byte array. But of course we won't be able to see it. So I'm going to take the content of my click event here, and we'll drop that in. Now, the first thing we need to do here is give me some place to put my hash code and my returning hash code. Then I'm using a straight boolean to determine whether or not the match works. I'm going to tell my function, go hash whatever you put in that text box, hash whatever you put in text box 2, and then put that result of the hash into my labels. That's what this looks like. Take that, salt and hash it, throw it in here. Take that, salt and hash it, throw it in here. Now to make that work, of course, I have to have some sort of a hash compare thing. And the way you compare a hash is pretty straightforward. All you have to do is take the results of one hash and compare it to the other. Which is to say I'm going to pass in a string and another string and return a boolean. Let's make that a little easier to see. Return a boolean that just compares the two. So if I put anything in there and I hash it, and I put anything else in and hash it, and this is the heart of why we even do this salting and hashing. I wanted to go through, make a secret word, take the secret word that I have, add the secret word I'm trying to protect, and then compare the two using the exact same algorithm. That's the key. Now that in itself would be fine. I'll just comment this out for a second so you can see how it runs. Go back to my form. Run it once. Make sure it does run. Since they have the exact same thing in there, I can hit the hash me button. And as you can see, that's what happens when I salt and hash. Better give you a little bit more room for that. But if I change anything here, let's say just change one thing, and hit the button again, you see I get a completely different hash combination, salt and hash combination. So there's no mistaking it, they're not the same. If I come back here, since I'm using the same algorithm, and hit it, it'll give me the exact same thing back. Now of course that's not the easiest thing for a human to do, so we'll go one step further. Because we want to have a little fun with this, I'm going to I've decided I'd like to display this in a using one of the new graphics tools that are available. So I'm going to go into my Visual Basic Power Pack and install the graphics tools. And once you install the cool new Visual Basic Power Pack, you should now see print form, line shape, oval shape, and rectangle shape on your toolbox. So after installing the Visual Basic Power Pack, you should now see lines, ovals, and rectangles available. I'm going to take an oval and just drop it on. And if you haven't seen these, how to use these controls, they're kind of fun to have, and it's part of the Visual Basic Power Pack, but it actually works with C# as well. Now I'm going to go into my properties here and tell it that I'd really like to have that control be blue. And of course that doesn't change anything until you change the style from transparent. And I'm going to make it solid, and of course I had choices there. You can do gradients and you can do all kinds of things. Alright, so I'm going to leave this blue for the moment because I also want to wire this up so that when you click the button, it'll do the hash compare for me. And that's this bit I commented out a little bit earlier because we didn't need it just yet. And I'll make one more change. I think what I'll do is have the button a little lower here. Slide that down some. Yeah, I just want to make a little more space for the results. Just because that was a bit crowded last time. Okay, let's run it. Okay, I'm going to compare my salt and hash. I click this button and you see it turns green because they're an exact match. If I change anything and hash it again, of course they don't compare. So we'll walk through that with a debug step. Put a breakpoint on the code. And we'll just do a quick little follow-up to see how we got here. Okay, remember the secret we want to do here is protect this. And the way we're going to do it is to give the user something he's going to supply me, which is his data. And then I'm going to salt it with something that the user doesn't know about, specifically to keep him from being able to reverse engineer it. So I'm going to hit this button that says hash me. Step into our code. First thing we're going to say, we'll step into that. And we'll step over each of these functions. First thing I do is I run out and get that data, which I've supplied. How do I hash and salt? There's the salt, which I'm using for my constant. How do I? And that returns a byte array for me. As you can see, 28 long. Now I take that same byte array and I drop them in for a hash by using the MD5 crypto service provider. And now you see, well, you're not going to understand that too easily, which is pretty good. That's exactly what we wanted. And then I'm going to convert that back, and I'll just do that in one step here with my return value, and you can see that I have a string that represents that byte array. Now when I want to come back and compare those two, we'll just step over that. Show my results in my text box. And step into my compare. Now you can see the compare is straightforward. I'm just going to take whatever I have for a hash in box 1, whatever I have for the hash in box 2, and hash them both and then see if they're actually equal to each other. Return a Boolean. Since that BOK is true, all I have to do now is pick which color I'd like my oval to be. And we'll let that run. Okay, this is Pat Tormey, and you've been watching How Do I Winforms Salt and Hash. Remember, the secret to this is we're going to protect a secret. And we're going to protect it by putting another string in with the string we're protecting and hashing the two together, specifically to keep somebody from reverse engineering the string that they have and coming back with a reversible hash. And the way you do it is you just salt and hash and then compare the two each time with the salt and hash.